Hey everyone, it's Christopher Swan, and welcome to this week's episode of Living Your Journey. Each week, I have this amazing opportunity to chat with people that love what they do in life. They understand their passions and their direction. Maybe it's a career path or it's the social impact that they're making. It's kind of like they're following their North Star, but they know their story may change and they understand that they're on a journey every day. On the show this week is Julian Mather, and he joins me all the way from Australia. Julian has this transformative story. I think of him as this ever-evolving entrepreneurial spirit. For over 25 years, he told stories as a cameraman for the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. But prior to that, he was a professional sniper in the Australian Army. Julian has also been a magician, founding Julian's Magician School with his immense online community. So talk about a diverse background of experiences. He's now exploring a new adventure of helping people with change, going through change, something he clearly knows a lot about. He's a king of reinvention, really, and really does know how to make it work. Julian has this fascinating story of adventures, exploration, and he continues to keep discovering. He's also a terrific guy, and I loved his can-do attitude and DIY approach to learning whatever he's interested in. Everyone, meet Julian. Julian, it is so great to have you on the show today. Thanks for being here.
I'm really enjoying being here for two reasons. One, I get to talk to you, Christopher. Two, I get to sit inside in the air conditioning because we're going through a heat wave here at the moment.
So you say this while I'm sitting here in the cold and we're expecting another giant storm with flooding. So I'm a little jealous.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm floating on an island called Australia down here in the southern hemisphere, and it's all upside down world. Yeah, we're in the middle of summer.
I know it's I'm sure it's hot, but it does sound lovely to me at the moment. Well, we're going to talk about a lot of change today, and just such a great story that you have. You have this wonderful background, kind of this interesting career journey. I kind of think of this fantastical list of experiences and I think you've landed, with some of the just research and the conversations we've had, you've landed in such a great place. And it almost seems like it's really a place of helping others. So I definitely want to get into your past and like how it shaped your current journey and kind of where you're at. But I'd love to just almost, if you will, rip that bandage off and just let's talk about the current. Let's talk about your world today before we kind of take a step back. Like, what's your focus in your career professionally? Where are you at today?
Right now, I'm obsessed. I'm a man obsessed because I heard something about a year ago and it completely changed what I wanted to do. You know that midlifers are killing themselves now. I mean, they are killing themselves at this increasingly alarming rate. If you're white, male, if you're 45 to 65 years old, then you are most likely to suicide. And I want to understand why, because it is completely 100% polar opposite to my thinking. I get up in the morning, I'm 56 years old now, and I think there is so much opportunity in the world out there. I mean, I literally can't wait to get going. And I know that sounds a little hokey, but it is so true. It is so true. So I want to understand why others are doing this in my demographic, and I want to do something about it. And I think a lot of it's got to do with people seem to have this inability to adapt to a lot of unexpected change that's happening in the world. There's workplace change, there's automation changing, and it's a faster moving world out there. So what I'm on is a quest to see if I can find some immediate, painless, and I guess inexpensive tools that midlifers can use to help them adapt to this change and ultimately, in the most broadest of terms, stop killing themselves. So that's what drives me.
And then that's huge. That's actually really big. Well, let me just ask, but why that? Why middle age? Why this? Not just trying to solve a problem, but why this problem for you? What makes you so obsessed about it?
Because they're people just like me, and I'm at that stage in my life. I'm a purpose-driven person. I'm a project-driven person, and I just look around and think that I can actually contribute here because I've lived this 350,000 hours since I started working of change, and change has come to me so easily. In a sense, easily. The process of change is easy. Actually doing it, like doing anything, is hard. That's the hard yards. But I've never had to really think about it. And I know intuitively I know about change. And so I wanted to see if I can formalize this somehow and take what I know about change and package it in a way that's accessible, because people need this now. I mean, when I say now, I mean now, not a year's time, not 2 years' time, because within that time there will be people who have either killed themselves or thinking about killing themselves. And I'm not standing here sounding like I'm some sort of messiah. I'm just a small, average bloke living in a suburb in Australia, but such is the power of the internet these days, such is the connection that we all have, that I know deep down that I can, in a small, small way, do something about it. And if I could just affect one person and stop them maybe even getting too close to an edge that they really don't want to be near, then to me it's worth it.
And is this also even beyond just that critical, that killing themselves, the suicide piece that we're talking about? Because you mentioned change, and change can even maybe not be to that severity, but change is hard and change is everywhere. So are some of the tools or things that you're thinking about even, or how to help, are you also applying that to people that are just having a tough time, maybe dealing with depression or anxiety?
Yes, but no, this is not just gauged at people who are facing, large difficulties in their life. No, this is just for everyone. This is just being prepared for anything that comes along. So if you have the rug pulled out from under your feet, you can go, oh, actually, I'm in a better position now to deal with change because I've actually started to think about change and about the process of change. So what I'm doing right now, and I mean, I'm pivoting left, right, and center at the moment. I'm in this area I call my fertile void, where I'm just sort of, planting these seeds and seeing what's grown. And the latest thing I'm at the moment is sharing my love of podcasts with people, because I have literally listened to thousands of podcasts, and within those 1,000 podcasts are many, many answers, because success leaves clues. The real truths are always written between the lines. So rather than just listening and having this sort of ad hoc, oh yes, I heard about this and I heard about that, I'm formalizing it. And for a year, I'm getting up at 5 a.m., I'm slipping on the headphones and I'm going for a walk and I'm listening to one episode that I think is useful about change. And then I'm writing, spending 2 hours every day writing about that podcast, the lessons and the messages and my thoughts about that change. And over these 365 days, I'm going to filter all that down and write a book about change. So I've done the hard yards of change. I mean, I've lived that, and we'll talk about that later. Right now, I want to formalize it down into something that people can access. So for the first thing that I've got is I'm sharing a starter kit of 12 podcasts that I know that if people listen to, and you listen to these in order, it's going to help you start thinking about change, because I truly, truly believe that you can change who you are and what you are by changing what goes into your mind. So get off the couch, get away from the TV, slip on a set of headphones and just listen to this series of 12 podcasts. It's a great first step to instituting some sort of change within your life. And then, hang on, you got me on a roll here, Christopher. And then I've got these other ideas, because not only is podcasting something great to listen to, it's something good to do. So one of the problems with podcasts is that it is basically in the hands of marketers, people who are out there to build an audience, to get people to basically spend money with them. And there's nothing wrong with that. I've got no criticism of that. But I think the medium is underused. And if anyone wanted to learn how to podcast, because podcasting is a communication tool, and one of the problems that people who are suiciding and who are getting depressed, one of the big things they say is, I'm not heard. people don't listen to me. They're not hearing my story. So podcasting is a great way to communicate. You don't have to have an audience of 10,000. You can have an audience of 5 people. Just the process of speaking and recording it is very, very useful. So I've devised this thing called Your Family Podcast, which is this idea of simplifying the whole process of podcasting. And you can start by making a family podcast, by recording your family stories. You know, when Uncle Bob comes over and you say, oh, we've got to get Uncle Bob's stories going before he shuffles off the mortal coil. This is a great way. I've simplified it down and given people access to this wonderful, wonderful tool. So when I say talking about, trying to create these tools to help, these are the sort of tools that I'm talking about. I'll take a breath now.
Well, I had so many ideas spinning around too. I live and breathe this, obviously, because you're on my show. And I can attest to so much of that it is really true that you do feel heard and so many wonderful things. So a question around these podcasts that, I love the idea that you talk about, as a first step, here's these 12 podcasts that you could listen to, and you're also deriving these wonderful messages that you'll then, curate together and create this wonderful resource later. I'm curious, just personally for you, is this how you came up with the idea, or meaning, did it resonate for you? You started to listen to a podcast, I wonder, and said, gosh, this is so useful, or maybe it actually helped you think about something differently, or you did take that walk and you experienced it, and that was the aha of I wish more people did what I'm doing right now. How did that come to be? Was this a personal experience?
Yes, and more than that. Because what I've learned about change is that it's come from a big mistake I've made in a lot of my life, and that is trying to take the journey of change by myself. I'm a very self-reliant and insular person. I've tried to do everything myself. And the problem with that, I've learned, is that you think you're doing a great job and you think you're capable, but you cannot see your blind spots, and you will never, ever see your blind spots. You need to be with other people who can point those blind spots out for you. And by doing that, the process of change happens much, much faster. I look back now and think what I've done, and I think what I could possibly have achieved way more if I had opened myself to other people. Now, that's a whole nother story about doing that. But here's the other thing I found about listening to the podcast. Yes, I did get so many ideas, but I've gone home and I've written about them. I make notes. I take notes all the time. I can't stop it. And it's the fact of writing it down that the ideas don't come immediately. They come further down the track. And as I write more notes and more notes, I'll be writing something. And to me, it just triggers a thought about something I've written before. And then all of a sudden, these pieces of the puzzle just start coming together, and bang, there's an answer, there's an insight that I've been looking for. I didn't know it was in there, but it never ever would have come unless I'd taken the process of writing it down. And I think that another way of doing this is doing what you and I are doing here, is talking. I guarantee you, by the end of this conversation, I will have another insight. You will just trigger a thought. You'll ask me a question. I'll put pieces of the puzzle together. It's almost therapy in a sense.
I love that, yes.
Yeah, and something will come out of this. So, the biggest thing I can tell people, that if you are an insular person, I'm a cave dweller by nature. I'm a typical male in that sense. Work against that. Work against that and get out and start to share your journey. Be a bit more vulnerable about it. More good will come than negative out of that.
Well, let's go backwards a little bit to some of your past careers. And first of all, they're fascinating. I think people will enjoy hearing this kind of zigzag transition because there's so much change involved in these. And what I would love to know is maybe we even start with, let's talk about being a sniper in the Army, because I think that is, I don't know, that just seems so opposite than what we're talking about today. So I love that. But here's the thing, let's talk a little bit about from sniper to TV and kind of how that transition and what that looks like. but also about change. Was it easy even back then for you, or what were the lessons that you were learning as you went from a career to a new career?
Okay, I'll try to give you the short version here, and I'll take it back
Okay.
a step, all right? Because for me, it all
Yep.
started at school, and I did
Sure.
really well at school if you don't count learning. I mean, I did so poorly at school that I had to repeat my final year, and I was doing worse in my repeat year, and I became a chronic truant. I pulled myself out of school, and I self-educated myself at the state library because I could see it was suiting me. It suited my needs a lot better because I knew what I wanted to do. I studied photojournalism by myself. I wanted to be a photojournalist, and I spent months and months of poring over photo books in the library. And I learned a really important secret, and that's to read between the lines, because that's where you find the true secrets. And I realized that one of the lessons that I learned just from looking at these pictures and reading all the text was that I needed to have a camera in my hand at all times, and I needed to be where the action was. And you know where the action was? It wasn't in my hometown of Brisbane, where I still live now. So I looked for ways out, and I saw an army recruiting poster on the side of a bus shelter. And I went into the army recruiting office and I said, could I be a photographer in the army? And they said, certainly, sir, sign here. And to my naive surprise, that's when the yelling started. And I knew it wasn't going to stop for about 3 years that I'd signed up for. And they put me into the infantry, and they didn't put me into the photography section that I'd hoped for. I knew I'd sort of been duped. So I was looking around in the army for where I could get some peace and quiet away from all this yelling. And I found one place, and that was in the sniper section. And it was a hard journey to become a sniper, but it really suited my antisocial personality. I could just sort of, get away and do my own thing and focus. And and I look back on my job description now, and it said you must have a personality which allows you to kill calmly and deliberately. Honestly, bad fit for me. I mean, my heart was not in that. The part of me that's, wants to hurt someone, Christopher, you could stick in a matchbox and still have room for the matches. So, it was just a bad fit. And so when I was there lying in wait, looking through the crosshairs, I was still dreaming of being a photojournalist, which is simply telling a story with pictures. And I started to realize that looking through my telescopic sight was like looking through a camera. So I started this process of making these imaginary movies. So essentially what I was doing was self-educating myself again in filmmaking. So I went from being trained to shoot people with a rifle to shooting people with a camera, which I got to tell you is much more socially acceptable. And then I left the army and I joined ABC TV here in Australia, different to the US ABC. It's government funded and it specializes in factual storytelling and documentaries. And it was wonderful. They said, go document people's stories. So for over 2 decades, they literally put a plane ticket in one hand, money in the other, and kicked me out the door and said, go do it. And I had a wonderful time traveling the world, getting a ringside view of life. And after 20 years, I had met so many VIPs. And VIPs to me are very inspiring people. And they were out there making a difference. And it's really keyed into this need in me to a sense of purpose, to want to make a difference. And I wanted to do that too. And I was doing little projects here and there, but nothing ever gained traction. And I started to think it was just me. I mean, I had pretty low self-esteem for quite a while. It's taken me years to get out of this, but I didn't think I was good enough. I thought all these other people were better. They seemed to be able to do things that I couldn't do. And then one day I had the simplest of realizations. I realized that all the people making a difference, they were in front of the camera. And that's where I needed to be. But I was behind the camera. And the only way to be in front of the camera was to leave behind the camera. So obvious that I
Can I ask then what is that what does that make that change or make an impact? What did that equal for you that they were doing?
again, that sense of that sense of purpose. It was so important to me. It was I don't know where that came from. Well, I do in a sense, wanting to make a difference and to help people. When I grew up, my mother for about 12 years ran a charity shop, and she lived above this charity shop, and that's where I lived for a while as well. And even though at that stage of my life I wasn't interested in them, I used to race motocross bikes and just be a little petrol head. And, but I used to see this, daily, her working with people and helping with people. And I was always called upon to, there's a box of stuff that's come in. Can you pick up this box and can you go through it and sort it? This stuff is going to be thrown out. This is stuff that we can sell. So really, it was shown to me by example. This model of doing things for other people. But for me, I'm not a hands-on person like that, Christopher. I'm not meant to be working in a charity shop. I'm not meant to be traveling and living in a village, working on a water program for a couple of years of my life. I've got more of an entrepreneurial mindset. I think, I can use my ideas and my creativity to, maybe contribute in some factor. But there was just this nag that was there. And seeing these people in front of the camera all the time. So we would just be called out to a press conference. It might be a government initiative. It might be, a local not-for-profit. I mean, it could have been many, many things. But I was always just going, well, I'd love to be doing what you're doing. And it wasn't for the ego. It wasn't for standing in front of the camera and people saying, oh, what a wonderful job you're doing. It was just the fact that seemed to be I just identified that these people, when had done the hard yards and now they were announcing what they were doing. Did I explain that?
Yeah, here's what I was thinking about too, because you as this cameraman for so many years, which is, I find so interesting because you're telling these powerful stories, right? You're capturing these stories of these people that you admire because of what they're doing, which I find to be a wonderful purpose for the people that wouldn't know the stories unless you told them. But it's almost like this evolution. It sounds like that you didn't want to be just the storyteller of other people's stories. You want to create the story as well.
Yeah. Oh, very much so. Look, that's a good trigger point. Yeah. I got frustrated, to be honest, at one stage of always being the storyteller. And again, part of that maybe reinforced or drove that feeling inside of me that, I don't know, that I wasn't good enough to do this. I was only good enough to tell the story, and maybe part of it was ego. I don't really know. I'm happy to investigate it.
But I love that you even think about it now too, a bit just about even further about that. Well, from there too, I'd love to go further because here's the one that almost threw me a little bit when I was doing this research and looking you up, Julian. I was like, oh, and he was a magician. I thought, of course you were. And I'd love to know a little bit more about that. And then the follow-up question of that really is, what's the connective thread here? What connects all of this for you? And I wonder if that's just evolution, and I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but I do wonder about that. So tell us a little bit about this. Yeah, getting in front of the camera, the magician, and where we went from there.
I can tell you the exact moment that where I deviated from my camera career onto this magic and entertaining career. I was in the United Kingdom. I was at a school called Banbury Comprehensive. It's a really tough school. Do you know the celebrity chef Gordon Ramsay?
Sure, of course.
Yeah, Hell's Kitchen and all those. Yeah, that's where he went to school. So if you can imagine a school full of foul-mouthed little Gordon Ramsays, all 15 years old, 17-year-olds running around, this is what the school was like. It was a tough school.
Yeah.
And it was so tough that they had their own policeman who was stationed at the school. That was his office. That's where he turned up to work every day. And this school had a problem with substance abuse at the time that I was going there. And we went to film this policeman, and he was talking to this classroom full of 15-year-olds. And I was down the back of the room and he was up the front. His name was P.C. Graham Waddington. And he was speaking to these students and they were hanging on his every word. He wasn't speaking at them. He wasn't speaking above them or below them. He was just speaking with them about aerosol sniffing. And I couldn't believe it. And I was just brought into this wonderful, wonderful world and these stories he was telling. And then the bell rang. And this moment was broken and all the chairs and tables scattered as his 15-year-old unruly mob grabbed their bags and made for the door really, really quickly. And from my position in the back of the room, I was the only person who saw this. 3 boys reached into their bags and took out a can of aerosol and placed it upon his desk without saying a word and just continued out the door. And I went, wow. I had spent literally decades watching governments, programs, all well-meaning, millions of dollars spent, to try to affect change. Yet here was one man, 30 minutes, 25 kids who stopped 3 kids putting aerosols up their nose that day, and something went off in my head. Bang. Direct action. And I just knew at that moment I would be standing in front of kids delivering a message. I didn't know how. I didn't know what it was all about. I just knew that I would be doing it. And that's how the journey started. So I started doing magic. And I did it when I was working and traveling as a cameraman, and it became a really, really good tool for building trust with people, because people rightly have a mistrust of the broadcast media, as for many, many reasons. And so because I was working in documentary, we would work with people over longer periods of time, and you need to build trust with them. And then when I brought out magic and they found out that I could entertain and make their children laugh, I was their best friend immediately. And they started to ask me, someone might be with a community, it could be a remote community, and I said, oh, could you come down to the school and do a show? And I always felt, yes, I'd like to do it, but I'm not good enough and I was underprepared. So over a process of years, I built a show, and it was called my Anytime, Any Place show, and I would take it with me, and I got good at it. And by the time I'd left my ABC camera career, I had done about 100 shows, and I'd done schools in many, many different countries around the world. And another thing happened at the same time. I got interested in philanthropy because we'd been doing this documentary on Australia's original philanthropic family, because it's not a big thing in Australia like it is in the USA. Countries like Australia and the United Kingdom, which have strong social security nets, generally don't rely on philanthropy as a way of, helping where help is needed. And so it was fairly new in Australia. And once I'd done this documentary, I might have been doing an interview with someone else who was in a position of authority, say maybe the CEO of a bank. And when we were setting up, I just go, oh, what do you know about philanthropy? And they'd either tell me 2 things. 1, I don't really understand it because it's not really an Australian thing. Or 2, oh, yeah, I'm going to do something about that when I retire. And I used to think, are you nutso? You've got your hands on the levers. You've got power and position and authority and influence. You can be affecting change right now. And it fell on deaf ears. So I started to think, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Can I teach the pups about this idea? So I got this idea that I could teach a new generation about philanthropy. And if I could package that in a way that was child friendly. So I used my skills of magic and juggling, and I designed this program to go into schools and work with 10-year-old kids and teach them this idea of philanthropy versus charity, that prevention is better than cure in a very, very simple way. And I went in prepared. I got to tell you, Christopher, I ran this idea past contacts I had with the government. I ran it past school principals. Thumbs up, really good idea. I ran it past parents, said it was a great idea. So I left my TV career. I self-sabotaged. And when I went out and I ran this show, I went to schools, they wouldn't book it. I said, hang on a moment, you said you really liked this idea. They said, we do like it, but we don't need it. And they said, have you got something about science? Have you got something about maths? Have you got something about literature? We need all those. And I learnt my first lesson about marketing. Never open a restaurant unless you got a starving crowd, something I had no idea about. So I'd left this ABC career behind, my TV career, which I got to tell you was really, really hard to leave. It was incredibly hard. You know, when I finally, I remember where I was sitting on my kitchen bench when I made the decision, and I cried because it was 28 years of my life. It defined who I was. I actually mourned leaving that career behind. That's how tough it was. But you asked me, is there a thread that connects all these things together? Yeah, there is. And I've only realized this reasonably recently. And that is my desire and love of learning is greater than my ego. So I love taking on new things. I love being that feeling when you're learning and you're experiencing new things. I'm willing to go back to a beginner's mindset. I'm willing to do the hard yards. I'm willing to eat the dirt again. And it doesn't really worry me. So when there's, for whatever the reason, and the trigger point for a career pivot or change or the move to a new area, I just sort of go with it, and I don't really worry about the consequences. And I mean, I do worry about the financial consequences. I mean, every person's situation is going to be different. I'm not saying to anyone, just throw caution to the wind and just do it. I mean, I've never done that. I'm actually quite risk adverse. I plan my process of change, and we can talk about that. I have an actual process that I go through, and it takes me about 5 years to make these, transitions. But it comes down to I'm willing to start at the bottom and work my way up.
You know, that makes me think about with your passions or that purpose. I think so many, you made a really strong point about this, how that career, as a cameraman, that defined you because you'd been doing it for so long. That's who you were. And I think so many people think that way about what they've been in. So career pivoting, that's not something everybody does. I don't even think they realize it's an option or a choice. And it's interesting with you, I now think of you not as these individual, a magician or a cameraman, but I think of like your journey, your purpose is really about learning, discovery, and bringing that and sharing that. That's kind of sounds like who you are. Am I off base at all?
No, yeah, and this has taken me years to realize this, because when I was doing all this as a cameraman and changing to this, meeting that policeman in the school, I mean, I didn't consciously process all that in the terms that we're talking about it now. I mean, it takes time, and it's what I was saying before about not doing this alone, about talking of these things through with people, writing it down, because the process then crystallizes your thoughts. And exactly what you're saying. I mean, what I think my purpose is, and I haven't nailed this down to one thing. I think one of the things I'm doing right now is I'm an encourager. And when you look at the word encourage, it's really interesting. And I've looked into this because I used to think the word encourage was to, give someone a little nudge. Come on, you can do it. A little pat on the back, all that sort of, but that's not what encourage is. Look at the etymology of the word encourage, N-E-N. It's that idea to pass on something. And courage is the quality of mind or spirit that enables a person to face difficulty. And that's what I do, is I'm passing on these lessons that I've learned to overcome the obstacles that I've faced. This idea that I can handle change. This is what I want to pass on. I'm an encourager. That's what I think I'm going to do. And through encouraging, I become an enabler. And that's what building these tools that I'm talking about, using these podcast tools, is to enable people to take action.
It's interesting. I think just even this conversation is like one of the biggest things I think people could take away from this too, is just you have permission to make that change, to do those things. Yes. Because I think people do get really stuck in especially when we talked earlier, midlife. If you're 40s, 50s, at that point, that can be a place where people do want change, but maybe they're afraid to do it. They don't think they can. So I think the biggest thing I heard there was that.
Yeah, it's really interesting you mentioned that. I was just writing about this morning after listening to a podcast episode, and they were talking about the subject was talking about how he was going through this career change, but he was 40, and how, I don't know if I can do it. You shouldn't do it when you're 40. 40's too late. And immediately my ears pricked up, and I went, why? What's this thing about 40? And that people seem to have, I've got to 40, I've left my run too late. What are you talking about? It's nutso. You're 40, you've got another 40 good years ahead of you. And with things changing, with the opportunities of online and the connectivity that online isn't, offering people these days, there are so many different opportunities that we can take. I think 40 is just the start. I mean, like I said, I'm 56, and man, I got many more changes ahead of me.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I agree. It's interesting. I was like, I'm in my 40s now, so of course I agree. What do you see when you look back at your career and these various experiences now? Like, do you look back and say, yeah, that did make sense, or I needed to go through that? Or is there something else that you've seen when you see it all?
No, I have one thing I have zero regrets. Hand on my heart. I've got my hand on my heart now. I have no regrets about anything I've done except for one thing, and that is about 3 people I've said things to when I should have just shut my mouth. Apart from that, I have no regrets. Because I'm an opportunity taker. This is a bit of a dad joke, but it's actually pointed. We're going to do a knock knock, Christopher. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Knock knock.
Who's there?
Opportunity.
Opportunity. Who?
Don't be silly, Christopher. Opportunity never knocks twice. And it's so true. It is so true. And, when opportunity just presents themselves, and, like a lot of people don't see opportunity. I think it was Thomas Edison said, most people don't realize opportunity because it knocks on your door, and when you open it, it's dressed in overalls with its sleeves rolled up. And, it is just hard work. I mean, nothing comes easy. But again, it just comes back to this idea about putting ideas and new knowledge into your head. You can change who you are and what you are by changing what goes into your mind. I think that is so fundamental, and it's the starting point. And again, it comes back to listening to these podcasts. This idea, people don't just want to listen to me. You're going to have people who are listening to me now and go, I really resonate with what this Julian bloke's saying. And you're going to have others who are going, I cannot stand this guy a moment longer, and they're going to switch off. And the thing is that there's many people out there delivering many good messages. You have to find the person and the voice that resonates with you. And I'm acutely aware of this. This is why, rather than me putting out a series of podcasts and going, come and listen to my wonderful version of how you should do things, I think there is so much more value in me filtering down the literally thousands of podcasts I've listened to and go, hey, listen to this one, this one, this one, this one. They're all from different people. They're all in different voices. And if you hear something that resonates with you, then you start listening to them, because I would rather you listen to them. And I mean, I'm in this to build, I've got to earn some money. I can't live on air. But it is. I would much rather you go and listen to them and you become part of their tribe and change your life than you give me a few dollars and not be really, really satisfied and motivated to change.
I actually really resonate with that. It is true. It's like, find your tribe. I do really love that. It's not about just one specific person. It's really about finding what works for you. I'm a big believer in that. I'm not a fan of every popular podcast out there. Sometimes they're a podcast that you've never even heard of that I really enjoy, because it's the host that tells the story in a unique way, or whatever the case is. So yeah, that really hits home for me.
And here's the thing, Christopher, the reason you asked me earlier about why I'm doing this, why I see a need. A reason I see a need is because many people over 50 still don't listen to podcasts. And the statistics point to it. And just anecdotally, I speak to so many people and they go, oh, yeah, your podcast. Not exactly sure. Hey, heard of it? What exactly is that? So we are just at the beginning, and it's such a wonderful tool. I call it the free university of life. I mean, honestly, I have listened because I'm interested in online marketing. There's a podcast I listen to where I have listened to now 200 and something episodes, and what I've been able to do online, somebody who studied marketing for 3 years at university said, you know more actionable stuff than I know, and I went to university and I said, well, I got it all for free just listening to podcasts.
It's true. It is really true that I've picked up a lot of great stuff too. Well, especially since you've listened to so many, and I know that you continue to do that. Is there maybe really not maybe non-career specific, so meaning not marketing, not HR, but is there any maybe great advice that you've recently heard that has resonated with you out of some of the shows that you've maybe played in the last month?
Oh, look, it all ties in because in a sense it's like that, if you buy a yellow Volkswagen, all of a sudden you start to notice yellow Volkswagens out there.
Absolutely.
I mean, quite often a lot of the information that I'm keying into is information that I already know, but I want to go into further in depth. So look, I can certainly talk about if you want some general actionable steps to introduce change into your life, I can talk about that.
Oh, give us a couple. Yeah, give us you talked earlier about some of the things that you do.
Love talking about this. Okay, so I've got this thing I call the 1852 rule, and it is how I change. So I work in 5-year blocks. People go, oh yeah, you can get my program 6 months to total life change, this and that. Well, okay, might work for some people, doesn't work for me. I work in 5-year blocks, which is 365 days times 5 years. That's 1852. Now, every time I make a change, I make small changes. Small changes. And how I do this is it's like, I always think of it like, okay, let's use a TV metaphor here, a film metaphor. Like if you're in a theater and you're watching the movie and the movie is a story up there, well, in the projection booth there's a projector and it's got a big roll of film on it, and that roll of film is the story, and it's got to start, and you thread the film through the projector and put it on. And as the film goes through the projector, it's made up of these literally thousands and thousands of little frames, and each frame in the film, the frame in front is a little bit different to the frame that's being shown, and the frame that was just shown is a little bit different to the frame that's being shown. So one's into the future, one's into the past, but there's little incremental changes, and that's how I approach change, making these small changes. And I've got this thing where you can try to change and be more like the thing that you want to be, or the person or the career you want to be. But sometimes you come up against these roadblocks and you can't. So what I do is then I go, well, okay, if I can't be more like what I want to be, I'll be less like I was. And so there's always a way that you can change. So I've got this two-step process that I follow. Really, really, really simple. Step 1, roll up your sleeves and take the next step. Now, if you're confused, then you go to step 2. And step 2 says your one and only job is to find out who can teach you what the next step is. And then refer back to step 1. And that's honestly all I do. So anytime I hit a roadblock, what I do is then I go, okay, I've just got to find out who can tell me what the next step I need to take is. And then while I'm doing that, I go, well, I'll be less like the old person. So if the old person is a little heavier, then I go, well, I'll lose a little bit of weight. If the old person has some bad habits, I'll go, well, I'll just work on just getting rid of those bad habits. So while I'm in a sense waiting to find out what the next step of the process is, I'm being less like I was. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. And it's very simple, which I think is what makes the difference. When something's simple, it's easier to follow and actually make that part of your next step.
Yeah. Now, the big problem that people face, and this is what I find all the time, they go, I can't start. I don't know where to start. I'm not motivated to start. Well, let me tell you, never, ever, ever wait to feel motivated, because it's going to be a very, very lonely wait, because that's not how change happens. Change happens, it always starts with what I call the 2 Ds, desire and discipline. They lead to motivation. Now, you might be really lucky and you wake up one morning and go, oh, there's just something in me. I know what it is, and I'm on my journey, and that's desire. And generally, desire leads to your marriage breaking up, right? Now, apart from that, you have to revert to discipline, because discipline is where it starts. It's just starting and taking the steps. So making a plan, breaking it down into really manageable bite-sized steps, and just starting back with what I was saying. Roll up your sleeves, take the next step. If confused, refer to step 2, which is find out someone to tell you. And that's that discipline of just doing this, because here's the thing. Your motivation comes after you start. It never starts at the beginning. So don't look for it at the beginning. Start and your motivation will come. Because from taking these steps, you'll start to experience the change. You'll see change happening, and that is the motivation. And here's what motivation is, I've worked out. Motivation is simply anesthetic for hard work. And it lets you keep taking the next step. It just numbs the pain of taking the steps. And that's it. It's a really, really simple process.
Well, I appreciate that. I love it, actually. Well, Julian, I think this has been great. I love where you're going, and I'm actually excited to hear more about how you pull the information out of the podcast and what that looks like next. So just to wrap up with a couple last questions. First, the most important, I think, is where can people find out more about you or follow along with how you're sharing information and what you're creating?
Okay, right at the moment, the easiest thing to do is go to julianmather.com, JulianMather.com. I don't know if my accent got that through. Okay.
We'll list it for sure too.
Yeah, and that's the number one place to go. And if you want to get these 12 podcast episodes that I've filtered down to get you started on a journey of change, to thinking about this journey of change, then go to, I've got to tell you what it's called. It's called bigmindsmallwaistline.com. And you just put your name and email address in there, and look, I'll pop those off to you, and we can stay connected. And it's a good way to start to people, to connecting with me. And if they find they resonate with me, then maybe I can help them. But certainly, I can point people in other good directions as well. So that's where to contact me.
That's wonderful. We'll definitely list that too. And I have to say, not even listening to your podcast, but I literally have done exactly what you just said. Listen to podcasts while I walk and while I do all these other activities, and have lost weight. And I didn't even try. So I have to say, I'm not even following what you're doing, but it's worked. So if people are thinking about it, for sure.
Yeah, because one of the, look, I mean, have I got a moment just to go off on one deviation here?
Do it.
Okay. One of the big things that I found when I was working in television was, because I was working, I had this ringside view of life, and I would work with people from prince to pauper. I got to see people, and I worked out one of the things that makes people successful. And, it was odd, and this sounds very, very strange, but I identified it. It's that successful people don't watch much television. And what I mean by that is that, they do watch TV, but they can't tell you who won American Idol. They can't tell you who won, whatever the favorite reality program of the day is. They don't immerse themselves. They spend that time applying themselves. And it started me thinking about TV, and I worked in it, so I'm a bit of a hypocrite telling you this, but making it. But the average Westerner watches 3 to 4 hours of television a day, right? And that's a beautifully benign statistic, because I actually think it sounds reasonably fair. Do a hard day's work, Come home, what's wrong with sitting around in front of the TV for a few hours? Well, let me just repackage those figures for you. If you watch 4 hours of TV a day, that equates to 52 days a year of watching TV. Now, I'm not talking 9 to 5. I'm talking 24 hours a day. So that's 52 days of your year. You're sitting watching something which is second rate at best. All right? Yeah, I think not too bad. If you're 60, you will have spent 9 years of your life, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, sitting on the couch watching television. Now, if you had a child or your grandchild and you had a hand in preparing and in writing out the script for their life, would you write in watching 9 years sitting on the couch watching TV? You know, I've asked that to many people and no one has ever said yes. So why do we do it to ourselves? Why do we do it to ourselves? Which is another motivating fact, this whole idea of ritualizing change. You have to ritualize change. And this is why I think, listening to podcasts and walking is such a great thing. If you can get up early or maybe do it at night, and if the weather's bad, you don't have to walk. You can do your ironing. You can do the cooking, but ritualize every day. Listen to a podcast and you're killing three birds. Let me speak English, Christopher. Killing three birds with one stone. You're getting away from the TV. You're regaining part of those 9 years of your life. You're attending to your health and you're educating yourself. What a wonderful winning trifecta. Okay.
Well, that was a perfect way to end it. I can't agree more. So, Julian, again, thank you so much for sharing just your past story and what you're doing and helping us think about change a lot differently.
I've really, really enjoyed it. Thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. So what'd you think? Any new ideas? Are you going to try something new? I'm always left feeling great and have a ton of ideas after these conversations. The guests are totally energizing me. Speaking of being energized, did you guys know about my Awesome Finds newsletter? Each week I share creative spotlights, meaningful stories, and new ideas to spark your imagination. And the reason I'm really doing it, I just want to share the great stuff in the world that energizes me to energize you. So if you want to sign up or you want to find out more information about it, go to awesomefinds.info. That's AWESOMEFINDS.info. Okay, back to the show. If you want to share thoughts about the guest or how the show sparked a new idea, I'd love to hear about it. You can call me and leave me a message at 1-707-347-9312. Just include your name and a brief message, and you may even be featured on the next show. If you want to follow along with me and see behind-the-scenes fun and my adventures, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at @MeChristopher. That's MECHRISTOPHER. You can also follow Accidental Information on Instagram and Facebook at Accidental Information, and on Twitter at Accidental Info. Also, we publish original articles weekly about following your passions, getting creative, and a lot more, all at accidentalinformation.com. Lastly, if you love the show and want to spread the goodness, go tell a friend about it. As in literally text someone or go email it to them. I'd love it. Also, make sure you subscribe to receive new episodes automatically each week. Thanks again for joining the conversation. Okay, that's it. We'll talk again next week.